Welcome to the Teen Life Podcast, where we explore your questions to help you make meaningful connections with teenagers, because no teen deserves to feel alone. Have a question you'd like us to address? Email us at podcast@teenlife.ngo. Now, let's jump into this week's question. I ask my teen how their day was, and all I get is, fine. How can I get them to give me more than one-word answers? So that is the question today, but we brought in an expert in this field. So it's not just me, Tobin, and Caleb. Actually, Caleb's not here at all, but we're replacing him with maybe someone better.
You're upgrading.
Definitely upgrading.
No offense, Caleb. We love you.
We do love you, Caleb. With Sarah Brooks. And so we're so excited. Sarah is, one of my favorite people to talk to. She's been on this podcast many times. If you've listened, she is a Teen Life board member. She's a volunteer. She is a super mom and just a champion of teenagers. She loves teens and just it has this gift, I think, Sarah, of getting teens to feel safe and heard and also talk back and interact with you, which is something that I love watching the groups that you do. They're just not our typical groups because teenagers are drawn to you. And so we want to lean in and listen to you today about what you have to say.
Let's go.
So to kind of start off, why do you think so many adults get stuck with one-word answers like fine?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think a lot of times teens are just uninterested in the conversation right then. Maybe, we can take that personally, but really it rarely has anything to do with what we think it might. Usually it's maybe they need a snack. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe they are thinking about something that happened at school and their brain is somewhere else. Maybe they don't want to engage right then. Maybe, it could be a variety of things. But I also think if you ask a lame question, you're going to get a lame answer.
Ooh, I like that.
And I think a lot of times we ask lame questions, right? Mm-hmm. So how was your day? Kind of a lame question. I think we do sometimes what I like to consider front door line of questioning. So we come in hot through the front door. It's a very direct, very straightforward question, and you're going to get a very flat answer, right? Mm-hmm. If we can approach conversations through more of a back door, through a more creative line of questioning, I think you get a lot better answers than just kind of your one-dimensional yes or no, good or bad, right? That's a very, we're coming in hot through the front door. Well, if you can just rephrase the question and come at it from a different way, I think you can get more full answers.
I've always heard that giving them options is like a better response. We do talk about that in groups too, of if you give them a yes or no question, it gives them a chance to just brush it off. Whereas if you give them options, they actually have to think about it. And then it turns into a situation where they have to think about the answer. And then you get a thought answer that might burn into the next question or the next, way to talk about it. So,
yeah, I think so. A couple of the ways that I come about things, kids don't want to look stupid in front of other people, especially in a small group setting. Yeah. They never want to look dumb. They never want to look like they don't know, and so I think one of the easiest ways, even with my own kids or anytime I'm in a group setting, I will ask questions about their friends. Like I'm going to ask my kids or I'm going to ask the group members, what would your friends say about? Okay, well, that's kind of a creative backdoor question, but the answer they're giving is usually their thought, right? So if I were to say, what do you think about this? That's kind of a pressure question. What if I get this wrong? Am I going to get in trouble with my answer? It feels a little aggressive for some reason. Okay, well, if I ask, though, what would your friends say about this? Or what do you think your generation thinks about? Right, I'm actually going to get the answer I was looking for.
Right.
But I've asked it in a creative way where I don't even think they realize that they're giving me a much fuller answer. So asking about their friends, I think, is a slam dunk. To your point, Tobin, I think kids also want to be the advice givers.
Yeah.
Right? They want to be the one with the wisdom. And so sometimes I'll tee kids up in that way too. What do you, if you were going to talk about this topic, what would you add to it? Or if you, what advice would you give to somebody? Again, I'm taking the pressure off. Like, what would you tell someone else, right? What would this alleged friend? What would this someone else? It takes the pressure off, but also just asking their advice about things. I think kids always want to be the expert, and so let them be the expert. Like, man, if you were parenting this moment right now, what would you do?
Right.
Oh, well, I would do that. Okay, well, you actually just told me a lot about what you're thinking without realizing it.
I think so. I have an example, which my son is not a teenager yet, but Josh took him to Waffle House late a couple weeks ago and sat down and I think asked a question about like, what do you think is most important? Or something. I'm not making fun of Josh. You're great.
Yeah.
And Sawyer just said, I'm not doing this. Like just straight up shut it down. Like we're not going here. We're not going here. We're not having that conversation. And so I think to your point too, sometimes needing to ramp them up, like you can't start with the big heavy hitting question and then be like, yeah, here we go. Yeah. Like there has to be somewhat of a build up to some of these things.
Or reading the room of, is this a moment for a deep conversation? Right? Yeah. And I think one of the quickest ways we shut down conversation without meaning to is we nag them into answering. So if we're like, how was school? Fine. Well, tell me more. Yeah. Well, that's the quickest way for them to not tell you more. They are definitely not going to engage if we are nagging them into talking, right?
I mean, this sounds awful, but I kind of view teens as almost like a wild animal. Like you wouldn't, if you're approaching a wild animal, you're not gonna run up to them and be like, oh, please love me and touch. Like you're gonna do the thing that animal trainers do is you hold out your hand and try to get closer. Like it's the same thing with teens. Yeah, it's the same thing with teens. Like you can't go in aggressive or else they're gonna immediately feel like unsafe. And even if you are their parent that has given them life, that's, if anything, that's might be worse. So
like you really have to let them lead. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong when trying to talk to teenagers. They are so controlled by adults. They are so controlled. And developmentally, their whole goal is to figure out who they are and to break out of that control, right? That is like what they are doing at this stage of life. And so for them to be trapped into a lecture or, this isn't the right time, I don't want to talk about this, it's just so much pressure. And so it backfires, right? So like I'm really trying to connect with my teen, but I'm doing it so earnestly that it actually has the opposite reaction because you're trying to force something that they're not ready for instead of kind of sitting back, letting, here's a good example of my own son. I asked how he went to church on a Wednesday night. I knew the guest speaker who was coming. He's awesome. And I had talked him up. And so he gets in the car and I was like, how was it? And he goes, I don't know. I didn't listen. And my gut reaction was to be like, he's amazing. What do you mean you didn't listen? But I had to bite my tongue because that is also the quickest way to shut down conversation. So I was just like, cool. Just like act like, yeah, cool. Okay. 10 minutes later, he tells me everything this man talked about. So he was listening.
Right.
He was taking it all in. And if I'm just going based on his initial response, he wasn't ready to talk about it yet. And that's okay. Give it time, right? And then when those conversations do come up, follow it. Right? Like if you're plopping down next to me on the couch at 10 p.m. and you're suddenly ready to talk and I really want to go to bed, that's an open door that I would follow any chance you have with your wild animal teenager.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you use the phrase open the door. What type of questions have you seen specifically that do open the door to real conversation? Like, can you share an example? Like what have you seen in your experience that does open that door?
One of my favorite questions to ask as a parent, I give myself parenting evaluations. And so I ask my kids, what is something I'm doing well as a parent and what is something that I can improve on? Okay. Because then I want them to know, like, we're all in this. We are all learning. We're all trying to figure out how to do life. I also love to ask the same about their friends. I'll say things like, which of your friends could use more parenting?
Oh.
And it's a slam dunk question because they give the best answers that I kind of am taking notes about hey, so I need to do this because this is important to them in parenting. And the flip side of that is, which of your friends could use less parenting and why?
Mm.
And it really gives me an insight into, how safe they feel, how respected they feel, what's important in that parent teen relationship. um I love to ask them, instead of, again, straightforward, straight shooting questions like, who'd you hang out with today? That's an okay question, but I'll ask things like, who's the funniest person that you know?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the meanest person that you know? Who is, like, fill in
Mhm.
any adjective there, and it gets them talking about stuff. I think also I love the question, what do you wish adults knew about your generation?
Mm.
Or what do you wish adults knew about the struggles you face online? Or, if you could talk to a room full of adults about things that are going on with your friends or about what it's like to be a teenager, what would you say? Because
Mm.
again, you're giving them the platform of, no, I really want to hear your voice in this. I don't want to
Right.
just sit down and lecture you. I really want to hear your thoughts.
I love that one because I feel like, well, all of them could be used by school too. They can be
Yes.
used by parents,
Yeah.
but they could be used by schools. They could be used by youth ministers of, hey, what am I, as a teacher, what do you feel like in this class? What am I doing well? How can we improve our classroom?
Yeah.
That's an easy question to ask. I also think what I love about the questions and examples that you're giving is you're drilling it down a little more. So it's not such a big question. Because when you
Yeah.
ask, how was your day? Yeah, it's been 8 hours. What am I
Right.
supposed to
Which
pick?
part of my day? Right.
Or how do I
Exactly.
remember
Right.
what's happened? I've done 1,000 things from 7:30 to 4 o'clock, and and that's in their world. Things feel like an some like my youngest, my 6 year old, he'll be like, "Oh, we did that in the morning. I don't remember the morning." And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Well, okay, but what'd you do?" Like, I don't know. It's like, I remember recess. Like that's pretty much, or you get it's like if you don't get the fine answer, you get the like, "Oh, well, lunch was fine," or
Yeah.
"Lunch was my favorite part of the day," or something like that. And so
Yeah, just so
when you kind
easy.
of nail it, like parry it down, it gives them a target to hit instead of
Yeah.
just, they're not just shooting blind.
That's so true. Yeah. So even, what was the funniest part of today? Or what did you laugh the hardest about
Mm-hmm.
today? Or what was the best what was the best item of food someone had at the lunch table today? I mean,
Ooh.
it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times we're looking for this really serious, deep connection. And what you're saying is that connection comes from a whole lot of little points of connection,
Totally.
right? So coming in with these massive questions and expecting massive answers, it's kind of a high bar.
Mm-hmm.
Really, you're just trying to connect with your kid and help them know, like, hey, I'm a kid, student, whoever it is. I see you, I hear you, I want to know about you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's going to be something silly, and sometimes that's going to be something deep. Um, I do think you can be armed with the best questions in the world and not be a safe place for them to be answered. And so I think before you can even, I love thinking of creative answers, but I think before you get too far down the question asking route, you have to consider what kind of listener you are.
Ooh, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can have someone ask that question, what's something I'm doing well? What's something I'm not doing well? Well, I'm not going to give you a real answer if I know you're not going to react well to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I tell you something my friends are struggling with and I know that I'm going to get in trouble for that, I'm not going to I'm not going to answer it truthfully. Um, and so having amazing questions is part of the equation. Not amazing. I mean, that was a kind of a high bar. Having creative questions is important. But I think before that, learning how to listen curiously, which is something we talk about a lot at Teen Life, learning to listen curiously and being unflappable and being not taking answers personally, I think comes before. Like, that's your foundation that leads to those deeper connections and conversations. You know
And
what I mean?
yeah, and then once you get past that, like if you listen curiously and you are unflappable, the next step, especially that I'm guilty of, that I do still to this day and I struggle with regularly, is it's not your job to fix it.
Yeah.
Like if something's coming, if your kid does open up to you and something's in front of you, you don't have to have the answer for it. Like you don't have to have the fix for it, and that's incredibly hard for me. And some of that's just straight up our DNA of a guy, like, especially as a father, if you're listening as a dad, like, we want to fix everything for our wives, for our spouses, whatever it may be, and that goes for your kids too. And
Mhm.
so just knowing that you may get this situation dumped on you that you're gonna have to be able to process and deal
Mhm.
with and know that you can't fix it. You just
Yeah.
have to hear it. And maybe you can down the road or the next day, whatever, but that's not your job in that moment. Your
Yeah.
job in that moment is just to give them a space to lay on the table what they're going through.
Yeah, and to hear them and not turn it into a lecture,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is so important with teenagers is not every moment is not a teaching moment.
Mhm.
You have these young adults that are really growing into themselves.
Mm.
And it's so hard as a parent or as a pastor or as a teacher or anyone in the role of like a mentor or an authority figure. It's so hard not to correct every little thing that we hear or to turn it into this big teaching moment. And what you're telling that kid in that moment is, I don't believe you can handle this, and here's,
Mm.
let me tell you how to do this. Instead of empowering them and listening to them and believing, man, that's tough. That is a really hard situation. I know you're gonna make it, and thanks for sharing that with me.
Mm.
Instead of, well, here's what I would do. Okay, well, that's the quickest way to shut down conversation, because then it's about you and not
Or
listening
relating
to.
it to either your experiences or, like, in my case growing up, it was relating it to my siblings.
Yeah,
And it's like I'm talking about me, I'm not talking about another situation. And so, like,
yeah,
and I
that's
think
true.
even if it fully matches what they're going through, let them be them and let them
And
it
have
be.
their own
Yes.
experiences.
And
Yes.
yeah, like, your experience, like in my case, is like, if the experience is something that I'm going through as a or I went through as a 16-year-old, I also don't have to dump that on my 16-year-old, but I can also use that as how to walk through it. How would I wanted to be walked through that? And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, you don't have to relate everything to something else or what it's like. That's their own experience that they need to talk about.
Yeah, that's so true. Listening is like, we just don't listen well.
No, none of us do. Yeah.
It really is not a natural a natural
Mhm.
trait. I think we really have to work on it. But to me, that is at the crux of everything, is being a curious listener and listening to what the other person is actually saying, not what you're expecting them to say and not what you're wanting them to say, listening to what they're actually saying the whole time they're saying it, and then coming up with what you're going to say instead of waiting for them to finish so that
So
you
that you can
can,
say what you want to
yeah,
say.
give your answer,
Mm.
your opinion, or it's so hard.
It is hard. Okay, so sometimes though we have to have conversations maybe that are difficult, and it's not well, I'll just wait. I'm thinking my kids are getting to the age where I'm feeling the pressure of, if I don't handle this conversation right, they're never going to come talk to me ever again,
Yeah.
which is probably putting too much pressure on myself,
A
but
little
I
bit, a little bit. Yeah.
1000%. Yes.
but I do know that of what we're talking about, that trust starts early. It
Yeah.
doesn't start with the first difficult conversation. It starts down the road when they think, even if they don't consciously think it.
Right.
And so one thing that I'd like you've kind of touched on this, but how do timing and setting matter in those situations where it's not just we'll come back to this later. It's like, no, we have to have a conversation. Are there things that I can do to set up this conversation well that kind of give me a boost, maybe that they'll be a little more receptive to?
Yeah. I think timing and setting is huge. Picking the right time, right? So right after school, right after sports practice, right after they've walked in the door from a friend's house.
Mm.
There's this marketing principle. This is going to be a little tangent, but a little offshoot, but I'm going to circle back. There's this marketing principle called the decompression zone. And so when you think about major chain stores, Target, Walmart, there's nothing within the first 20 feet. After you've entered the store, it's basically blank space for the first 20 feet or so before you get to a shelf that you can buy stuff from.
Mm.
And they call that the decompression zone, because research has shown after you've driven your car to the store, you've parked, you've gotten out, you are walking with purpose through the parking lot. And it takes about 20 feet before you are decompressed and ready to shop.
Hmm.
Super interesting. And now
Super
you're going to
interesting.
see it everywhere. But the same is true of humans, right? We have these decompression zones where a lot of times we'll come at our kids or our spouse or whatever, like come in from the door, from work, and we're immediately wanting to talk about something. Right. Man, let's give it a pregnant pause here and let us kind of get our bearings. I think it's really important. I think the side by side, anytime you can be having a conversation while moving, maybe going on a walk, maybe driving, side by side, I think is such a powerful diffuser. When you're sitting across from someone and having to look them in the eyes, sometimes that conversation does need to take place. Like, I'm breaking up with you. I probably need to look into your eyes while I tell you that, right? But there's a whole lot of other conversations that I think.
Don't do that through a text, by the way. If you're a teenager listening.
Yeah, don't do that through a text. Yeah. Do it through a message on another platform.
Yeah, there you go. DMs only.
Give them a HOCO. What are those called? Those promposals. You could give them like a breakup. Never mind. Okay, I digress. I think anytime you can do side by side or be doing something while you're talking is huge for teenagers. So maybe you're planting flowers or you're coloring. You know what I mean? Kind of diffusing the face-to-face awkwardness. But I also think, to your point of, that is a lot of pressure on you, by the way, to like get it right. I think it goes a really long way as parents. Not even parents, any adult in a teen's corner. It goes a long way when you acknowledge to them verbally and often, I'm not getting this right all the time.
Yeah.
So if you just absolutely, I crashed out on my kids yesterday. I was like completely unreasonable. I was just, and another thing. I mean, it was one of these moments. And later I was like, I'm really sorry. I got overstimulated. There was a lot going on and I was acting like a psycho. Do you guys forgive me? And they were like, yes, you were acting like a psycho. Instead of being prideful and like, I'm the authority figure here, I think I think part of the way we build that trust is to own up when we don't do conversations well, or like,
with humility.
Like you were telling me that, and I totally hijacked that moment and got and lectured you, and I'm really sorry. I don't want to be that. Can you tell me again? I had a situation with my youngest. He was trying to tell me a story and I was doing stuff and I wasn't paying attention. And I found him upstairs in his room like 30 minutes later and he was just sitting there crying. And I'm like, what's the matter? And he goes, I was trying to talk to you and you made me feel like I was invisible. Okay, well, that broke my heart, but I had to make that right. I'm like, okay, I'm really sorry. You did not have my full attention. Can we try again? I think goes a long way. Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
That we don't have time for right now.
No.
But I do think that phones make that more difficult on both ends.
Absolutely.
Like the conversation, I think the first thing is, as a parent, because I'm bad about this, my kids will be telling me something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep. And I'm still looking at something. And there have been times where I'm like, I'm so sorry. I need to finish this first. It is time sensitive. And then I want to give you my full attention. But acknowledging that and not trying to do both, you cannot do both at the same time. You just simply cannot. And so I feel like that's somewhat of a challenge for adults listening too.
I will say, going back to your question, I think it's also important to set expectations. If you have to have when you need to have a serious conversation, I think it's important to set that expectation ahead of time and just say like, hey, we got to talk about something that's going to be a little bit hard. Like, don't try to catch them off guard with it. Let them know, hey, this is going to be tough, but it's important that we have this conversation. And if time allows, like you're saying, time sensitive, maybe you do need to have a conversation right that moment. Or if you can give them choice, hey, we have to have a tough conversation. Do you want to do that now or in a little while? Like, give them choice of even when you're ready. We got to talk about something that's kind of hard. So when you're ready, let me know.
Yeah.
That's really important because as a 40-year-old man, if someone texts me and says, hey, call me when you can, my anxiety goes through the roof.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
And because that's how we are naturally wired in general, but teens even more so. But if they know, because you just have to know your teen, because some teens are like, oof, let me go drink some water and take a breath, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, let's do that now. Like, we need to hit that now, because otherwise I'm going to stress about that until we have the conversation.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah. I think side by side is important. Also, make sure everyone is well fed. I don't think that we can give enough credit to what being well fed and sleeping well does to somebody, right? Let's talk about this over a nice snack. I think is small but weirdly important for teen raging hormones and,
right.
Anybody really.
So some of the best advice I got when I started doing the teenage parenting stuff was the side by side on a drive, especially as a father son thing. And one thing that I've kind of flipped that with because of phones is, instead of me having to say, "Hey, I want you to put your phone on. This is important," I make my kid drive now, and we have those side by sides where he can't drive or he can't be on his phone. And I try not to make it too serious because they need to be focused on driving, but that way it gives him something to think about and do, but while also processing the conversation. So he's not like, but he's also not going to be distracted on his phone. And so I've had some really good conversations with my teen since he started driving, where he's kind of, this sounds awful, he's kind of trapped in some ways, because like he's driving and he can't be on his phone, but he also has to like listen and has something to kind of like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like fidget with, like as a driver, like he has like a thing to be focused on while also listening. And so
the car is huge. So is walk. I mean, my teenager and I got in the habit of going on a walk every night. And the things I would hear with just your body in motion, like we are designed holistically in our bodies to where even your body moving connects to your brain and your heart in ways that, I mean, there's like scientific evidence of what happens when our bodies are moving while we are processing and while we are talking. It also, whether you're in the car or walking, whether you're, if you're side by side, it also gives you a chance to stifle your reactions. You know what I mean? If we are going to be unflappable, there's times that your kids will say things and your eyebrows shoot through the roof. If you're side by side, you get to like do that for half a second and then stifle it and move on and act like you didn't just inwardly gasp. Yeah, just like it's fine. Everything is totally fine right here. Yeah, I love that. I'm ready for a teenage driver.
Well, I think for our school staff listening, if car is not an option, because hopefully you're not
That's
in
true.
a car. I think what I love about teen life groups is we do things like coloring or Play-Doh that just get their hands moving, get them, as Tobin was saying, thinking about something else, maybe where you're not just sitting eye to eye.
Painting rocks, like have those in your classroom, have those in your office, anything that you can fidget with.
Yes.
Some of the best administrators I've worked with, they literally will walk the halls with kids for that same reason of, if you will just pace the hallway, not only does that calm down their endorphins and their nervous system, but it also, it's again, that side by side. And those kids know that walk is because they're having an issue, but it also creates a safe relationship that we had kids at school I used to work at that would like ask to go on walks with our principals because they knew they needed it, and so like that's a way as a school staff that you can say, like, you can't leave your classroom to do that, but like it might be like during your conference one day, take a 5-minute walk with a kid, or like find someone that does have a flexible schedule to come take a walk with your kid when they need a break and they need somebody to talk to, like a safe person.
Good.
So,
well, Sarah, thank you as always.
Yeah,
for your advice and your thoughts. And I think if you're an adult listening, I mean, just look for an intentional way this week that you can connect with the kid. And as Sarah was saying, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the perfect question. We sprinkled some examples throughout this episode, but maybe it's a car ride or a walk or some way. Maybe you need to have a teen, hey, will you come help me do something real quick? And then you get to ask them.
Let's go to Sonic.
Yes. And so look for a way to connect with a teen. And as always, subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen, and you can watch us on YouTube as well. And we'll see you next time.